Hello and welcome to Self-Advocacy Wins, a podcast about disabilities and the cool people who have them. I'm Kelsey. I am the founder of Self-Advocacy Wins, the app. It is social media for people with intellectual disabilities as well as their supporters. Kamisha is the self-advocacy advisor on the project, and it is part of a fellowship called the GoPen Fellowship out of the Institute of Community Inclusion at UMass Boston. Is for people with developmental disabilities who want to do a project based around disability, and it can be any disability. So I've developed a social media app for people with intellectual disabilities and their supporters, and it is coming out soon. I'm also autistic and I have some mental health stuff, and it's kind of all that comes together to make a disability. And here I am with.
Hi, my name's Kim. I have CP. I have been with CP for all my life. And important things that matter to us and that matter to you. This is a safe space where everybody can feel included and at the same time.
Why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about CP and what does the CP stand for?
CP stands for cerebral palsy. And cerebral palsy, in my case, is funny. But in my case, I was born with spasticity, which means I don't when I hear very and I have yeah, I jump when I hear very loud noises when people sneak away. When they like getting you when I don't pick something. I go to therapy for my CP and I because I also feel that I can go where I go to PT, and it's a great way to get out, at least for me.
And shout out to, is it Spalding? Shout out to Spalding. So I'll just say a little bit about autism. Autism, as Kamisha said with CP, everyone is different who has it. And to be very clear, I'm not trying to be the spokesperson for autism because it drives me crazy when people try to take their experiences and make them the universal experiences. But I'll just say I have level 1 autism, and the way it affects me is primarily social and employment. So it's like very hard for me to socialize, to like make friends, I used to have a really hard time getting along with people. And then I got the right medication for it, which was really helpful. So I'm doing much better now. So Krisha, I have a question. How does your disability affect you in everyday life?
Well, Kelsey, my disability affects me in everyday life because I cannot get around as easily as someone else who can. For example, I use a wheelchair to get around easily, and I use walkers. When I was a kid, I used to wear braces. Sometimes my speech sound clear because my tone. We'll talk about in future podcasts. But yes, disability affects me, but it doesn't affect who I am per se. Like, it doesn't stop me from traveling and being just like everybody else. But just like some things that as like traveling, I have to plan extra to do that kind of stuff. But it doesn't stop me from doing everybody else does. I just like do things a little differently.
So for me, we're different in that I have like what they call an invisible disability, because you just look at me walking around, talking, wouldn't necessarily know that I have anything going on in my interactions with other people, how I relate to other people. difficulty holding jobs, those sorts of things. Now that I'm doing work on my own, doing something really passionate about, I'm doing quite well. So work environments make a big difference. And that's also something we can touch on is what helps you with and when you have a disability. And there's different models of disability. There's the medical model, there's the social model. Some things in my life I don't think the rest of society could help with, like, it's just very internal. But then other things, if things were set up a little bit differently, I think I would do really well. So we can talk about those things too, how to make the world more accessible for all kinds of disabilities. Okay. So now that we're talking about self-advocacy, how did you get into self-advocacy?
I've been doing self advocacy my life since I was a teeny tiny toddler, I guess. I got into it more because I realized that people with disabilities, people in general, didn't hear the voices of people with disabilities. Again, not to say I'm the spokesperson, but I not feel like people with disabilities should have their voices heard more. And so that's why I stepped into the role of that and everyone to be heard and feel wanted and included in our communities. How about you, Kelsey?
I really learned a lot about self-advocacy from you. One of the cool things about self-advocacy is that I think there's so many ways to be a self advocate. So you can be someone who's like rah rah and really loud. You can self advocate by yourself, or you can be a self advocate with the help of other people. So maybe if I'm at a doctor and I'm trying to get a certain treatment, I might bring my mom in because I might know that if there's two of us, the doctor might listen more. So I'm still self advocating, even though I'm bringing in a supporter because it's still coming from me. Misha, I'm sure you have a million examples of self-advocating, but you have one you could share with the people at home.
A lot of time, my mom had self-advocating for me, which is I'm very grateful for that. But at the same time, people usually listen to me. So I try to take the reins on going to my own appointments and making my own appointments. But if it's something specific that I need help with, like I would bring my mom along to be like, okay, here's what the doctor's saying, so forth and so on. Something that you don't know about me, Kelsey. I've been able to speak since the beginning by where I had trouble speaking. I went to speech therapy and things like that. 26 years later, here I am. I can't stop talking. Yeah, it's a long process. I try to be as independent as I can, but my mom also helped me out in many different ways when I need it.
Yeah, and I think that also speaks to what you were saying about never making assumptions. Because, like, I think a lot of people, they might look at the two of us and be like, assume that I'm like the independent one, but I'm still living with my parents, whereas Kanisha is in an apartment by herself. So there are certain things that I'm able to do that she's not going to be able to do, but there are certain things that she's doing that I haven't been able to do yet. So you can't just look at us and assume you know which ones were independent. You assume you know who can do what because people can surprise you. And I think another thing that I really liked in your story about not being able to talk at first, and then now for people who don't know Kamisha, because she does a lot of things, so I'll brag for her. But she's also a trainer at Mass, and she does a lot of speeches at like conferences and things. So she's an excellent speaker. So don't it but I know we're not the spokespeople for disability, but I would definitely recommend to everybody, do not limit if you're a new parent, do not limit your child because you really don't know, and I think that's true of any kid with disability or not, you really don't know what they're capable of, and by setting a limit, you're just guaranteeing that they're never gonna exceed it. Whereas at least if you set, "You know what? Sky's the limit. You can have all the potential in the world. The person's gonna outperform, and they're gonna be happier for it, and everyone's gonna be happier for it." That's me on the soapbox. Don't limit your children. Don't assume to know what people's potentials are. And also, it's okay if you need help getting to your potential. You don't have to do it on your own. So if you want to bring your mom to a doctor's appointment, that's probably a good idea. Doctor's appointments can be very overwhelming, especially if they're explaining a lot of complicated medicines to you. Thank you for that, Kamisha, because I think that touched on multiple good points.
You're welcome. And I too, if you downplay on your child, that can lead to depression and all those other stuff. They might not feel as validated as they should, which can lead to a downward.
Okay. Did you give us one example of when you self-advocated?
Why?
Okay.
So one time where I self-advocated was when going to the doctor's office with my mom. And they weren't listening to me, so I politely said that this appointment was for me and not for my mom. So they should listen to direct attention toward me. So they started doing that, and I felt more empowered when they did that because I was like, oh, they're actually listening to me now. If I didn't say anything, they'd just keep talking to my mom.
Yep.
But my thing too is I like to try first before I help. Um, if I feel stuck in a way and I don't know what I'm doing, I could be like, Kelsey, what's going on? Or, Mom, what's going on? But like, I try to put that empowerment in the dependency within myself first before I ask, because sometimes people can unexpectedly take over, which I don't want people doing when it comes to me.
Absolutely. Hey, it's interesting because when I'm thinking about times I've had to self-advocate, it's also been in a medical setting. Sometimes it's been me telling my parents I have to get treatment and like you have to drive me to the emergency room, like, and I'm not taking no for an answer. Other times it's been talking to a doctor about medication. So like this last year, I had severe depression for many years and I had done ECT, I did residential treatment programs, and then one residential treatment program, and then I did TMS, which worked for a couple months. And then I went back to the doctor and I said, I really want to try ketamine therapy because I've heard that that's really powerful. And that's basically the only treatment I have left. And the cat was just being cute. That's the only treatment I have left. And he said, no, I don't think that'll work for you. And I kept fighting him. And I kept fighting him. So I was like, okay, I'll do another round of TMS. That's where they shoot magnets through your brain. So I did another round of TMS and then I did the ketamine therapy. And after 2 weeks, like night and day, like my depression is totally gone. I feel amazing. And just being able to say, wow, if I had not advocated for myself, if I had not pushed, I would still be really depressed. And because I self-advocated, I got the treatment that I needed, and I'm doing much better now.
So yeah, I kind of did the same thing with um my depression. Just like, talk to my doctor about, you know, like I get mad, like I'm happy and then I get mad. I'm mad and then I get happy. What's going on? So in 2017, they put me on medication and it has been somewhat of a life changer because I'm not a light switch. But sometimes I am, which is totally fine. But sometimes I'm like, I can't control it. I need my medicine. So, like, there's a teeter totter side of how, like, it helps. But at the same time, I advocate for that I push for that. Not to say like I I not to say like I wanted to be that person of like, oh, I don't have depression. Who has depression? But like in myself, I felt like there was something wrong. So I was like, oh, let me talk to my doctor about it. So we came up with a better plan to be like, here's what you need to do, vice versa. So we got on a plan, and it's been good so far.
Awesome. Yeah, we also like to talk about mental health on this podcast because mental health is very important. We're very both pro mental health treatment, whether that means therapy, medication, whatever it means for you, taking care of yourself. We're big fans of that. What would your advice be to people new to self advocacy?
New to self advocacy, and not to limit themselves, right? You want to be the best version of yourself you can be. And so do I, and vice versa. So I feel like the best way to not put yourself in a box, per se, is to go out there and see what works for you. And if it doesn't work for you, yeah, it's fine. You can try another path, try another way that works for you. What about you, Kelsey?
Those are really good suggestions. I think a big part of self advocacy is picking your battles and knowing how to communicate with people. So, for example, I'm going to move to LA pretty soon. And when I was telling my dad's just like, oh, this is fantastic. Great. He has no concerns. Whereas when I talked to my mom, she's very pragmatic. So I actually went on Canva, our beloved Canva, and I made a presentation about moving to LA, therapists. I looked up doctors. I looked up sports and recreation leagues. I figured out what neighborhood I would want to live in. So I figured out all the details so that I could present it to my mom because she needs those details. So knowing kind of what battles to pick, knowing how to communicate with your intended audience. There's something that Marsha Linehan, who is the creator of DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, has said, and that is that it is better to be effective than it is to be right. And that does not mean that it's good to be wrong and that it's not important to be right. But what is the point of being correct if you are so abrasive that nobody wants to join your team? And what's the point of being correct if you can't explain it? And so nobody else can, maybe they want to follow you, but you're not explaining it well. So they can't figure it out and they can't follow you. So and I was a communications major, communications professional. So I think that's why my information is more about the communication of self advocacy. Know your audience.
Yes. I would say the same thing about my family. They're very protective, and I appreciate that to the end of the. But at the same time, like, let me be my own person. Like, let me do everything that someone else can do. Like, go shopping, go to the mall, or go out to drink, things like that. Um, Communicate to your audience. And people may not agree with what you're saying right away, which is totally okay. Your opinion is not your opinion, and your opinion is not their opinion. We want to keep that communication line open.
Yeah. And I think we both understand that parents are protective by nature. Like they're supposed to be. That's their job. Like we understand that. I have a nephew. I know you have nephews and nieces, right? So we both understand that, parents see these kids and you have to completely protect them from the time they're babies. It's hard to let go. And we understand that if you look at us and like for me, my mom's like, you don't have the best track record of living on your own. So she's married. And I'm like, no, but you have to understand, like, I'm in a different place than I was before. I know things now that I didn't know before. I have skills that I didn't have before. I have medication that I didn't have before. So we understand that protective instinct. And it's better to have a parent who is a little bit more protective than a parent who doesn't care about you. Like we want parents to be protective, but you also have to remember that we have to be able to make mistakes too. Like, just because we have a disability, just because something hasn't gone wrong in the past, doesn't mean we can't take a risk. And like when I was talking to my parents about moving, I said to them, like, I have an older brother and he went off to college. He did a semester abroad in Italy. He didn't ask any of us permission to go to Italy. He just went, and then he went to graduate school in England, didn't ask anyone's permission before he went to grad school, and then he stayed in England for an additional 2 years. Again, didn't ask us, and then when he came back to America, I don't think he ever asked us where he should move. He just, like, moved to New York. Every time he's gone somewhere or he's traveled over the country, my mom's so worried about where I am and where I'm going, and my brother is traversing the universe on his own, and we hear about it, like, a month later, he'll be like, "Yeah, I was in Denmark," and we're like, "What? When when were you in Denmark?" So, yeah, so I understand that my parents are more concerned about me than my brother, I get that, but no one was requiring him to check in when he was, living abroad, and I just wanna be treated the same. I just want the same kind of, "Okay, well, he was allowed to stretch his wings, go outside of his comfort zone. I wanna be allowed to go outside of my comfort zone too."
Like, and same with me. Perspective of like, hey, my sister can go out till 1 o'clock in the morning so I can do the same thing. Oh hey, my brother can drive. Why can't I? I want that same respect as everybody else. Like Kelsey is saying, I want to feel equal to my peers and everyone around me.
So what would you tell to supporters or people who don't know about disability?
Do not assume what someone can or cannot do. Ask the person if they need help, if they feel comfortable with wanting help and needing help from you. Don't give them the side eye when they don't feel like they don't want help from you, or vice versa. And please, 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 do not talk to people in the disability community like they're babies, and be respectful. Be respectful as much as you can. We know this world is going upside down. We just want to feel equal, and we just want to feel like everybody else. But we just have unique perspectives on certain things. How about you, Kelsey?
I agree, and definitely for the unique perspective, because one of the things that I know with autism, like, we have a very hard time with employment traditionally. It's really interesting because there's a lot of people who are able to get college degrees, but there are a lot of people who, and I know this from my own journey, I kind of was just going, going, going. And then during college is when everything kind of started to fall apart. And I was able to graduate because my mom would drive me in at the very end because I couldn't get to class. So I was able to graduate, but it's like I was on autopilot for my childhood, and things were, again, kind of getting to the social idea of disability. The world was more catered to me. Like, I could go to school and see people who I was friendly with and have fun with them in school, but then I didn't have to do anything on the weekends. Socially, everything was there for me. So for me, once I got to college, that was extremely difficult. And I didn't get diagnosed with Asperger's until I was 24, which was, like, really helpful to understand and everything. But what I would say to supporters is that, like you said, don't assume, because we might on paper have a degree. We might look like we should be able to do stuff, but then stuff we actually struggle with. But I would also say be careful, again, getting a little to, well, let's end with a hot take. Okay, so this is my hot take. Don't listen to certain people in the autism community, because there are certain people who are autistic, particularly level 1 autistic, which is functioning, Asperger's, all that. It's now rolled into one. There are a lot of people, including from a certain organization, who really just box out anyone else with more moderate to severe disabilities. And they, for example, this one group. I won't name them because they're very litigious, I think, but there's this one group that says that there shouldn't be any self-contained classrooms, that there shouldn't be any group homes, there should be no congregate settings. And again, working with people with severe disabilities, my cousin, for example, has an intellectual disability. She got a perfect attendance record in high school because she loved school, because she was in a classroom where the teacher was trained to work with her, but also enthusiastic to work with her, where everything was for her. So they did some academics, I'm sure, but they also worked on life skills, helped her learn how to cook, helped her learn how to get a job. She continued on until she was 22, because in Massachusetts, if you don't graduate, you can continue to get a public education until you're 22 years old. And then she went on to work at Shaw's. So for her, that classroom was the best place possible for her. And anybody who knows more severe disability understands that. It's good to have the individualized support that you need, because we all have different educational needs, but some people just need more to focus more on life skills, for example, than academics. But this one group, they are the most verbal and the most loud, so they get listened to the most. Every time I read an article about autism, this group gets interviewed, and they basically say that there's no profound autism, there's no different levels of autism. They also talk about they don't like the high functioning, low functioning labels, but then they replace it with high support needs and low support needs, but they don't like the term special needs, but they'll say that they're high support or low support needs, which doesn't make any sense because those are the same things as high functioning and low functioning. Just this is my own experience. And I worked with a lot of people. I've been going to autism groups for like 12 years now, 13 years now. And there's just so many people who are not being included in the conversation about autism. So, like I said, I'm not a spokesperson, but I do just want to bring up the fact that the people who are purporting to be spokespeople are often not, yeah, not. They're representing a very small sliver, and like they don't even know what ADLs are. And if you don't even know what ADLs are, you don't know anything about severe disability.
And like put someone in a box just to feel happy and just to see yourself, because it does not work.
Okay. So, non disability related question. What are you doing for fun right now?
What am I doing for fun right now? I love being active and stay active when like exercising and going to concerts and and now doing these podcasts with Kelsey and like experience the world, and travel and do crazy fun stuff. Like sweet opportunity. I did it at a program called Epic. Yeah, it was pretty fun. I do rock climbing when I have free time, and like I do everything else that everybody else can do. I just on my time, and I feel like when I'm in that zone of like nobody limits me, that I feel more free of like
What am I doing for fun right now? I'm getting back into writing. And so I just joined a creative writing group through this organization in Boston that's for Asperger's and autism. I have to read my work next week. So I should probably work on that a little bit more this weekend. A lot of people on the spectrum are very passionate about certain things. And so for me, like that's musical theater, that's TV, that's writing. But I'm interested in so many things too.
really. I just want people to believe in themselves and not limit themselves. If you do have a disability or not, don't be so close-minded and keep a positive outlook on things, because right now society is just like no, no. But if you're like no, no, no too, nothing will get done. And I'm the type of person where I want to get things done, I am the type of person where it's just like, I want to get things done on my time. So don't rush the process. You can do whatever you put your mind to and dream big.
That's the perfect way to end it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for watching and listening. We will have some really cool guests coming up in the future. And again, if you have any feedback, if you want to get a shout out, and if you want to get interviewed, selfadvocacywins.com. You can fill out the contact form there. We're very excited